I'm passionate about boundaries because without boundaries, we as sensitive people, we have no containers for ourselves or our life. When boundaries are easy with certain people, this is a really good sign that these are our people. When mutual respect and maturity are high, they barely feel like boundaries. They barely feel like we're doing boundaries work. With our people, when we're on the same wavelength, boundaries just feel like simple communication or negotiation. When boundaries are difficult, it's because each person involved doesn't really understand the bounds of their own side of the street. Remember to find Emotional Badass wherever you get your podcasts, and please hit that subscribe and follow button. You'll get more videos like this in your feed and never miss a thing. Hello, welcome to the show. This is Emotional Badass, where Moxie meets mindful. I'm your host, Nikki Eisenhower, life coach and psychotherapist. And on today's episode, I'm discussing the truth about peace, boundaries, and maturity. Now, most people out there come to boundaries work because they grew up in a home with poor communication, high reactivity or high silent treatment type punishments, low to no negotiation, just black and white, full compliance of what the biggest, most powerful, loudest person wants, or a fight to the finish to see who wins, and the winner gets their way. If we add immaturity, addiction, the stress of poverty, victim mentality that does not seek any kind of better way or self-development, then boundaries without a whole lot of support are extremely difficult to figure out, to learn, to create, and to keep without a whole lot of support. In healthier family dynamics, there's no winner or loser. Healthy family dynamics strive to negotiate so that everyone can win as much as possible. Or there is an acknowledgement of taking turns when you can't get your way. I'm passionate about boundaries because without boundaries, we as sensitive people, we have no containers for ourselves or our life. And we wind up feeling like soup being put away in a gallon-sized Ziploc with an entirely open bottom. No wonder we feel messy, exhausted, and frazzled without boundaries. Boundaries are how we keep the soup in the bag, y'all. Boundaries are how we live in respect to our own energy levels. The reality that we are not robots, we're human beings with limits. And we all have different limits for different things, different times, different seasons. Boundaries are how we act in self-esteem. Instead of chasing people-pleasing so that we attain some kind of empty other people esteem. That doesn't really work. It doesn't fulfill us. It doesn't satisfy what we're yearning for, a worthiness, a self-esteem. Without boundaries, we tend to feel massive life dissatisfaction, even resentment, which can lead to depression, anxiety, and inauthentic lying whenever an invitation presents itself in our lives. Now, I, of course, can't see you, but raise your hand if you've ever used "I'm sick" to get out of something when you weren't. And that's in conflict with the values of who most of us purport to be or who we want to be, who we think of ourselves as having a moral compass. This is a tribe that values authenticity. Yep, at the top of our list, we value authenticity until, if we haven't learned boundaries, if we haven't learned to set down our codependency and our people-pleasing, then we throw our authenticity out the window. Conflict avoidance shows up, tossing that authenticity and honesty out the window simply because our family of origin was so dysfunctional, we didn't have it modeled to simply say, hey, I don't have space for that. Maybe next time. Thanks for inviting me. I teach boundaries and peace. These are my two main courses. I'm working on one currently about healing after narcissistic abuse. And I'm hoping that will be out this year. It's not out yet. The Boundaries course is not open this year. It'll be open in 2025. If you know that you are called to work on boundaries with me, jump into the Peace course this year, and it will set you up to receive the Boundaries course next year. Why? Because too many people come to boundaries trying to set boundaries with a completely activated body, a completely dysregulated nervous system. We come to this work with a hypervigilance, overwhelm internally and externally, and massive exhaustion. The conundrum between boundaries and peace is that we need boundaries to have peace. But when we're exhausted and frazzled, dysregulated, we don't think so clearly. We tend to react instead of to respond because of the state of our nervous system. Even if we know in our thinking parts, in our heads, wait a minute, I'm ungrounded, I'm not doing my best thinking, I'm throwing stuff at the wall, we have a lot of struggle accessing grounded thought, strategy, choosing our words artfully and wisely when we're reacting. We need a certain amount of peace to be able to think through and construct and then execute our boundaries. And then be ready to steady ourselves for what's typical is massive pushback from our family systems. Knowing what to do, what to practice to have more peace is like a secret weapon in boundaries work. This is what will help you craft your future life through a lens of boundaries with less stress, less exhaustion, and more energetic simplicity in boundary setting. The next group goes through emotional strength training 30 days to peace on the 1st of the month. Come sign up right now. We're at the tail end of the month. Use the code BADASS. It'll be in the comments and the show notes. It's just 5 to 15 minutes a day, y'all. All you have to do is open an email once a day. And I know you're overwhelmed. Everything I create is to bring you these life lessons in the simplest, easiest way that I've learned to come up with over my 18-year career in mental health. My specialties have centered around helping people heal from trauma. This is the conundrum. This is the paradox. This is the dilemma that we do need time and space to work on these things. And it feels like our own systems, when we're dysregulated, are fighting against our very goals. So we can come to peace and we can come to boundaries. And the more peace we have, the better our boundaries. The more boundaries we have, the better our peace. And we get to dance and get better at this dance all the days of our lives. When it comes to boundaries, I've constructed a random list of some considerations just to ponder, to think about, to see how you relate, how you'd like to relate to these concepts. All right, the first thing I have for you is, do you really think it's a coincidence that one of, if not the most popular first word in our language, across cultures, across different languages, it's the most favorite toddler word, right? No. This powerful 2-letter little bitty word. I believe we come into this world having a very strong comfort level with no, or it wouldn't be one of our first words as human beings across the entire globe. Only dysfunction shuts down the simplicity and beauty of a toddler who knows how to say no. Only dysfunction makes saying no feel wrong, guilty, shameful, overwhelming, charged, conflated, confusing, complicated, like we're going to get punished for it. Boundaries bring us back to what I think of as our natural birthright. This natural relationship, this flow, this ease with no. We have every right to say no sometimes. And a toddler knows that. And yet so many adults don't know. Number 2, boundaries really are easy with certain people. Have you noticed that in your life? When boundaries are easy with certain people, this is a really good sign that these are our people. Now, that's a concept that is really hard to define, right? But we tend to know that when we feel it because we feel relaxed, we feel natural, we feel the opposite of hypervigilant when we are with the people that get us and we get them. When mutual respect and maturity are high, boundaries really are pretty easy, y'all. They barely feel like boundaries. They barely feel like we're doing boundaries work. With our people, when we're on the same wavelength, boundaries just feel like simple communication or negotiation. We don't have to set a boundary. It's not taxing, it's easy. When boundaries are difficult, it's because each person involved doesn't really understand the bounds of their own side of the street. And for understanding boundaries, this is a very easy and simple concept that you can tuck in your pocket and take into any situation where you're relating to other people. If you and I get together to converse, to hang out, to socialize, I have my side of the street. We all have our personal space. It's about 3 feet around our bodies. We feel weird if someone we don't know steps into our personal space. That is an energetic boundary. And it's natural and we all feel it. When you come hang out with me, you have your side of the street. It's really simple and easy to figure out what's my responsibility if I'm alone. It's me. It's all on me. When we get together, what happens is my side of the street and your side of the street overlap. Then it starts to get a little confusing. Whose job is it to speak up? Whose job is it to manage the feelings? What if one of us is doing more than the other? Is that okay? This is a negotiation space. But if we grew up with dysfunction, we probably didn't see any real negotiation. We saw fighting. We saw immature, passive-aggressive punishing tactics. We saw power and control issues dominating somebody else. We saw winners and losers. We didn't see negotiating for the greater good. We didn't see energies coming together to try to get as much win for everybody involved as possible. We didn't see anybody come together to try to mitigate any negatives or any uncomfortableness, to have as little sacrifice as possible for all the players involved. When we know how to negotiate, what we really know how to do is respect each other. And we're respecting what's really basic, that each human being gets to negotiate to meet their needs. And each person will, hopefully, if maturity is present, come to the table willing to have some reasonable sacrifice, not unreasonable sacrifice, but reasonable sacrifice. Because getting exactly what we want as a human being in relation to what other beings are doing, that's rare, y'all. And it's an expectation born of our most immature parts, not our most mature, evolving parts. Relating to people with an unreasonable expectation that another person will make choices and decisions that bring comfort to me, that serve my best interest, my desires, instead of their own, is rather irrational, but unfortunately normalized in Western society. Likely influenced greatly from now decades of really immature reality TV, like Jerry Springer vibes and Housewives of whatever county and city. Shows like this have glorified conflict at the maturity level of middle school. An immature ego wants what it wants and tantrums when it doesn't get what it wants. It has little space for anybody else's need, desire, or limit. Number 3, boundaries work is almost exclusively talked about in terms of setting the boundaries. and setting them with other people. When I teach boundaries, I teach that we are responsible for our own emotional boundaries, our own energetic boundaries. And a big issue for the population is that so many people have this skewed view of boundaries. Boundaries work is going to be when I wag my finger at you and tell you where the line is. No. A lot of our boundaries work is going to be about respecting our own limits. And if I'm not respecting my own limit, like I need to leave this party by 10 p.m. because I have an early morning, then I'm expecting somebody else to walk up to me and go, hey, Nikki, I know you have an early morning. You should probably leave now. I'm expecting somebody else to respect taking care of my needs when I'm not willing to do that? A huge part of boundaries work is not just in the setting of boundaries and taking responsibility for all of that. It's in receiving boundaries from other people too. You have a right to take care of yourself, respect your limits. So do others. Maturity doesn't just understand this, but embraces it. Good boundaries work shows up in graciously allowing, even encouraging others to have the boundaries that they need to have with us. Do you gracefully receive no's from people or not? If not, what do you do in the moment where someone looks at you and says, no, I'm not doing the thing you asked me to do? However you fluff that up and communicate that. What do you do in the moment that somebody is telling you no, is setting a boundary with you, is not going to do the thing you envisioned, you expected, you hoped for, and your balloon feels burst? What do you do right in that moment? And where did you learn how to do that instead of grace? Consider what you want for yourself here. Growth is possible. It takes diligent mindfulness to be good at boundaries, setting them and receiving them. It takes self-awareness, and it takes leaning in when your patterns are screaming. And I mean screaming for you to lean out and keep everything same, and not change. Lean into this kind of discomfort. Evolve. Giving grace goes both ways. When you give grace, and that sounds like, thank you so much for knowing how to take care of yourself and not people pleasing and just telling me yes because I asked. It helps me know that when you say yes, you mean it fully. Helps me trust you. When you give grace, you're not just giving grace away. You're helping yourself embody and feel grace too. Grace is a two-way street. You both benefit. Number 4, people who bristle at boundaries more often than not have control issues. Now, many of you listening will feel a drop in the pit of your stomach hearing me say this right now, like a gulp in your throat. Because you may be used to being shamed. And whenever we say control issues, isn't shame supposed to follow that? Shame on you, you shouldn't have control issues. We can throw that old, dilapidated way of being out the window. You may be used to being shamed. And you may run that shame program in your head hearing me say this. Let's work on changing that stinky old shame program that you just don't need to feel anymore because it's not useful. And I'm not shaming you. That's just an old program if you felt a pang when I mentioned control issues. I'm not shaming you. I'm shining light on what you can let go of so that you get to feel lighter inside of yourself and in your interactions. And this is what helps us feel more mature, y'all. So many HSPs, so many highly sensitive people over the years have confessed to me that they don't really feel like an adult, no matter what age adult they are. They feel like an imposter adult, a poser. And they don't know why. It's okay. And it's safe and it's brave and it's wise to acknowledge what you were not able to learn growing up. And then to help yourself learn it now. Parents out there, this is how you break cycles of dysfunction. Not by learning fancy psychology words, but by changing this within yourself and modeling it for your family. Many people with control issues were raised by personality disordered people. I certainly was. And things were so out of control that the best way I could take care of myself was trying like hell to control what I could control. It makes so much sense that if you were raised in any kind of chaos, that you develop some controlling ways to try to stabilize internally and externally. This was a great thing that you tried to do for yourself, to have some kind of control. We need to feel a certain amount of control as humans. People who have issues with control tend to not be well regulated, making overreaction turn into manipulation in high stress moments. And this is when we start to campaign to get our way, because we don't know how to tolerate the emotions of not getting our way. We don't know how to tolerate. We haven't had it modeled how to receive a no, how to be disappointed without getting dysfunctional. What wasn't modeled was real, true listening to one another. What wasn't modeled was true negotiation in word, in vibe, in energy, in attitude. What wasn't modeled was respecting boundaries with each other as a positive, not as a winner and loser situation, and damn it, now I have to lose. In a win-win situation, that's what wasn't modeled for us, that we get to have win-wins. For people who do not have control and manipulation issues, a simple, no, that event doesn't work for me right now, so I'm going to pass. Thank you so much for understanding. Please invite me next time, is met with, okay, I understand. I'll miss you, and I'm really bummed that you're not going to be there. But I get it. I understand. If someone's done a lot of work on themselves and has a lot of maturity, a lot of communicative art and grace, they can also acknowledge, they know how to say, and hey, thank you for speaking up and saying what you mean. I like that you can say what you need. I like that you didn't just tell me yes just to say me yes when you really wanted to tell me no. I respect that. Y'all, the hidden sauce here is that someone who can say such things grows respect and trust with others. It's like that old saying, would you rather be liked or respected? People pleasers, to their detriment, choose liked. And they tend to not connect how that makes them not respect themselves very much. And how do you get out of or avoid depression if the real core issue is, I'm not respecting myself or my life? I'm valuing pleasing other people over myself as a continuous, daily, exhausting pattern. How could anyone really and truly like and love themselves in this people-pleasing mode? There's such a beautiful secret sauce of self-development in realizing, wait a minute, if I start getting more honest, if I start saying honest yeses and honest nos and negotiating in between, I'll respect myself. What if that is the secret to having other people respect me? What most people do about respect is they show up with their inner child and they go, damn it, I'm an adult and you should respect me, damn it. And that's going to make me feel better when you respect me. Yeah. But it's fleeting. It doesn't stick to the emotional bones like we want it to. Self-care, self-respect, they're inside jobs. That's why it's not other care, other respect. Boundaries teach others to respect you because you are leading with respecting yourself. Number 5. In the second example, I shared that when boundaries are easy, you're really with your people. You're on the same wavelength. And boundaries are just simpler, easier. You don't even think about the boundaries word. There aren't fights. And you don't feel like you must become a lawyer with an airtight case to be able to have a boundary. So with the people who are not your people, this means with the people who are not our people, we will likely feel guilty setting boundaries. All kinds of wrong, especially at first. Because the more dysfunctional, the more difficult, the more misunderstanding of self-respect, boundaries, all these healthy things I've mentioned today, the more pushback, the more blame, the more shame, the more verbal assault or verbal tantruming a controlling adult will give you directly or passive aggressively, silent treatment vibes, telling you they're fine when their energy is trying to light you on fire through their eyeballs. This passive aggressiveness and this nastiness is trying to get you to do what they want instead of respecting that you want and need in ways that are different than what they want and need of you. You get to articulate some kind of no. Please understand that you will feel guilty. There is no doing boundaries at first without guilt. And you're going to feel that because your childhood programming was to get you to be boundaryless because your family system does not have a connection to healthy boundaries. If they did, they'd be less dysfunctional. And you'd probably be less into my show. So you're going to feel wrong. And you're going to feel more wrong and more guilty if and when that person you're trying to set boundaries with tries to convince you that you're so wrong for that boundary. Do you see how this is a trap? This is why it takes real outside of the family support to grow into consistent, useful, healthy boundaries. Because the people we need the most boundaries with are the very people who know exactly how to make us feel so wrong about setting the boundaries that we won't do it. And that means the most dysfunctional people in our lives get to continue to have unimpeded access to us. If you are to have more peace through boundaries in your life, then your job, as I see it, and you're always welcomed and encouraged to reject anything that I say. You are your own authority figure, nobody else. But your job, my job, our job in boundaries, if we want peace, if we are trying to break cycles of abuse and dysfunction, is to understand these dynamics and not let these dynamics sink your boundary ship, sink your self-respect ship, sink your self-worth ship. Boundaries take grounding yourself in peace. And that feels unfair because conflict, when you grow up in such dynamics, activates our nervous system. We are on the cusp of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn while we're trying to do boundaries. Because conflict has so frightened us. Conflict has so overpowered us. We have learned so many dysfunctions around conflict that our insides panic. And your head might know damn good and well, all right, I really need a boundary here. And your insides may be running in flight in the other direction. So boundaries take grounding ourselves in peace and being radically accepting, willing to be wildly uncomfortable in the pursuit of future ease instead of dis-ease, future comfort. You will be uncomfortable and you will be unsure as you test boundary setting. Kind of like learning to ride a bike. There's nobody who learns to ride a bike, come on, without falling off, skinning some knees. But we don't die. Our skinned knees heal. In boundaries work, even in peace, you will fail sometimes. You will fall off that bike. That's okay. That's how we get to a place where we can ride that bike without falling off. We learn not to fall off from falling off. But you will get some scraped knees, even in peace work and in boundary setting. Even toddlers who learn how to walk. None of us learn how to walk without falling down. Give yourself a chance to practice to get it wrong so you can grow into getting it right. Boundaries and peace are the way. And like the bike, practice is what makes it simple. But it sure feels complicated and overwhelming at first, like we're never going to get it. Practice is what brings ease. You ride a bike enough in your life, you don't even think about how to ride that bike. You just hop on and go. Practice boundaries enough and you won't even have to try so hard one day. Can you imagine that? What if peace and boundaries could be so much easier for you one day? And if you can't believe that yet, I'll do for you what my mentors and healers have done for me. And yeah, it chokes me up every time I go there. When I doubted how much I could grow, when I felt like the dysfunction was me, I thought the dysfunction was my personality. I thought that's just how I was because it was the dynamics I had always been in. My mentors, my healers, my therapists, even my friends, they believed for me how far I could go until I could believe it myself. And sometimes I thought they were wasting their time and I thought they were out of their mind. They knew better than me. And I'm so glad they did. I believe with every fiber of my being that peace and boundaries are possible and available for all of us. I mean, all of us. Even if you've endured what we think of as the worst of the worst. May you one day be able to drop me a note that says, Nikki, I believe it now for me. I have peace I didn't know I could have. And I have that now. I know it sounds corny, but we heal the human condition one human being at a time. Focus on you and be the change you want to see in the world. If we all did this, we'd transcend dysfunction. And the human legacies we would pass on would be peace. You are part of that movement. You are part of healing the world. Not next year, not 10 years from now. Now. Take a deep breath and smile. Peace is possible for you. Boundaries are possible for you, and they will get easier. Find that badass code and sign up for Emotional Strength Training 30 Days to Peace now. If you want a bigger discount, come join our Patreon. You'll get commercial-free episodes. You'll support our growth. You'll support the show getting out all over the world. And you'll get access to all of the graphics that we put together for so many of the episodes to help you have visual content. The more senses that we can hit on as highly sensitive people, the faster we learn, the faster this information isn't just some fact and some tidbit of nugget of knowledge or information. It becomes who you are. And that is when we are healed. I am an emotional badass. You are an emotional badass. And together we are where Moxie meets mindful. Light and love, and I'll see you next time, right here. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.